this is one of the things we do is an executive huddle. It's from 9:15 to 9:19. There's 4 people on it, and you have 60 seconds, not a minute more, not a second more, right? And you have to summarize, what are you doing in the next 24 hours? And then where are you stuck? That's it.
And
then
it forces them to think about it in advance too.
Yeah.
And it gets you understanding what the other person's doing and where they're at in their mind too, because you may be able to go, oh, no, I talked to a guy yesterday. It's solved already, right? And all of a sudden it's gone. You might burn a whole half a day on something that's already been solved.
This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and Float Chart with your boy,
My boy,
Matt Wolf and Joe Fier.
hey.
Good morrow.
Good morrow.
Yeah, isn't that a thing that somebody says?
I don't know.
That people say, good morrow.
Bone marrow. You can eat that. I don't know. I was just thinking. I'm hungry. Maybe if you noticed.
Yeah. Because you're talking about bone marrow?
I don't know. Good morrow, bone marrow. I don't know. Like the little fancy places with bones and you can eat out of them. And
never done that.
Yeah,
I know people eat bone marrow, but I have not done it myself.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's tough to find. Don't know why I thought about that, but I am hungry. So maybe that's why. Okay.
Not going to go find some bone marrow for food.
Nah. Typically, it would probably be like Mexican food.
Yeah.
That's probably more accurate. Yeah, that too. It's probably health. I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows what's healthy anymore? I know it is healthy is...
Trevor Turnbull?
I was going to say the conversation we had with Trevor.
Okay.
But maybe, I'm assuming Trevor's pretty healthy too.
Yeah.
I would hope he is. So Trevor is our guest today, Trevor Turnbull.
Second time guest on this show. Third time guest if you include the older episodes before this show.
The lumped in, the show has evolved from years past.
Yeah.
And Trevor he's definitely a veteran of all shows.
Yes.
And a good friend of ours. So we had Trevor on back again. He's a LinkedIn expert. He's our go-to LinkedIn expert. So if you're looking for LinkedIn type stuff, he's basically the guy, but listen to this episode first because don't just jump into LinkedIn because that's probably not the first our best move you can take.
They're already listening. That's why they're here.
Exactly. So keep listening. Good point. Trevor's an amazing dude. He's a really good buddy of ours. He's been like deep into LinkedIn everything for the last 10 years, he said. And it is still figuring out like a good content strategy around all that stuff. Oh, actually, he figured it out, but it's just really interesting because we actually didn't talk a lot about just LinkedIn on this episode. We thought we would, but we actually went back into more of the kind of behind the business, opening up the hood a little bit to see what's actually driving this thing.
Yeah.
And it goes back to really him evolving as a business owner, as a human and a business owner. And then we do tie it into LinkedIn too. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, this one is, I feel like with our show in general, and you'll probably start to get this theme over the last few episodes and the ones that are coming up after this, the theme lately has been about, yes, we are still talking about business. We are still talking about tactics that you can implement in your business. But I also feel like we've been spending a lot of time talking about the human condition, the human experience, and like what makes an entrepreneur and what things need to happen in your brain and in your daily life and in your routines and with your relationships and all of the stuff that's sort of not your business. What things need to happen to improve your business. I don't know of a better way to describe that, but we're really kind of talking about like what makes humans tick and why we fail and struggle at things and why we succeed at other things, and really kind of getting to the root of like the sort of mental progression that happened to get you to where you are. And I feel like it makes for much more fascinating conversation. So I'm actually really interested, anybody listening that wants to write in or talk about this on like our Facebook group or anything like that. I'm curious of your thoughts of this sort of reverse engineering how somebody's brain works versus teaching the tactics. Because I kind of feel like, in my mind, almost any tactic you can find like a YouTube video for, or can be explained in 7 or 8 minutes. It doesn't really provide a lot of fodder for amazing conversation, but the sort of human condition, mental side of it, the how we operate and why we operate the way we operate, I feel like that leads down really interesting conversations, but almost all of the biggest ahas and insights come from those conversations and not like hey, here's how you can get 25-cent clicks on Twitter, right? Like that stuff is cool and I love talking about it, and there will be more of that on the podcast, and we'll always have tactical stuff. But I think the stuff that really makes fascinating conversations and brings the biggest ahas is the type of stuff that we're going to talk about in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I said it doesn't really matter the 25-cent clicks if you don't have your shit straight in your mind, in your life, with your family, with you as a person. Like we had Kamal Ravikant on here, and I think I mentioned him here or in another episode, but it starts with you loving yourself and understanding yourself and like really getting cool with yourself and identifying what makes you tick.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is that's actually ironically how we met Trevor originally.
Yeah.
Is going through a leadership training that exposed a lot of this in us. Has really helped us identify what makes us tick in blind spots. And I feel like as business owners, like it's more than ever, it's important for us to do this.
Yeah.
So we can lead a healthy life, not only in the business, but just in general as showing up in the world the best we possibly can. So it's, I mean, this podcast or this episode, it's actually another point, and we won't belabor this too much, but it's like we've gone through transitions. We've talked about it on our therapy session, and it seems like Trevor is going through very similar transitions, different. But we're the path he's on is very like we're like right there. And I feel like there's a lot of folks that reached out to. Well, I know there's a lot of folks that reach out to us saying the same thing. Like the therapy session you and I did, in your truck, talking about chopping a lot of our business off and going more into affiliate marketing or leading straight into affiliate marketing, brokering, growing our own newsletter and podcast. It's huge.
Yeah.
And he's doing similar things, but there's action steps that we talk about in here.
Yeah.
I think
and so anybody who's like turning off the podcast right now going, oh, they're just talking about mindset stuff, not tactics, I'm going to turn it off. Don't, because we do get into some tactics around content marketing and some of the strategies that he's using. We do cover that stuff as well. So don't get scared away that we're going to get too emotional for you on this one.
No,
we're going to get into some rad tactics that you can implement in your business as well. And we're taking notes on all of it like we always do.
And there's a lot of good notes here too. And there's a lot of good resources that were mentioned as well and strategies. So yeah, get the notes. Go to hustleandflowchart.com/comp, C-O-M-P. You got 2 weeks to get them for free from the time that's going live. So it's hustleandflowchart.com/comp, or pick out your phone, get your phone out and text to the number 38470. Text the word comp, C-O-M-P.
That's right.
38470 is the phone number. Comp is your word.
Let's go talk to Trevor Turnbull. That was 4 T words all in a row.
Yes. Good job.
Hey, before we jump over and chat with Trevor, I want to tell you really quickly about LinkedIn. People are kicking butt right now with LinkedIn ads. And guess who we're talking to on this episode today? We're talking to Trevor Turnbull, the LinkedIn ad master. If you haven't heard of Trevor, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to LinkedIn. So this is the perfect episode for LinkedIn to be sponsoring for us. LinkedIn helps you reach the right professionals at the right time. They've got over 62 million decision makers, and you can connect with pretty much anyone using LinkedIn. It is super, super powerful. And it's not just about awareness either. LinkedIn ads are driving traffic and engagement. Whether you need visits to your landing page or your webinar or whatever you're selling right now, LinkedIn can really help you with the traffic. And LinkedIn is hooking up listeners of Hustle and Flowchart as well. So if you haven't tried LinkedIn yet, listen to this. This is going to be cool. Try it for yourself. LinkedIn is offering a free $100 LinkedIn ad credit to launch your first campaign. All you got to do is visit linkedin.com/flowchart. That is linkedin.com/flowchart. Terms and conditions do apply. Now, let's go talk to Trevor Turnbull, our LinkedIn expert, about LinkedIn and cool stuff surrounding LinkedIn.
Trevor, welcome back. You're back.
Yes, sir. I'm back.
You are
back.
Round 2, man.
One of the very few that have made it for a second show. Actually, if you count the Authority Insider show that I was doing before Hustle and Flowchart, this is your third time.
That's true. That's right. I guess when you guys send out the swag with your logo on it and stuff, and I put it on and take pictures and share it with the world, it's just like, hey guys, bring me back.
Yeah.
Floating here.
I know I was going to say, is this even allowed? A three-peat? Is it? I'm going to lump it in. It's 3. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're paving a new path.
I do consider Authority Insider because there was no gap between ending Authority Insider and starting Hustle and Flowchart. I was running that podcast. I talked to Joe one day. I'm just like, we should co-host a podcast together. And he was like, all right, let's do it. And then it just kind of rolled into this show. Mm-hmm. So I do kind of consider that like the same show. We just added a co-host and rebranded. Pretty much.
And think about how much has changed since then, right? I don't think any of us had kids at that time when you and I did the first interview, Matt.
I would have. Yes.
You might have had,
Yeah, because I have a 7-year-old, so she would have been born, but my son, not yet.
Probably not. Yeah. But yeah, things have changed, like business models, life, of course. I mean, so many, it's all growing in the direction it should be growing.
Yeah, well, I know the last time we talked, neither of you had kids, I don't think.
No.
Definitely
not. Definitely not.
And what a journey that's been. Holy man.
Yeah, we both did down some crazy paths. You've been down your own crazy path, mine too.
Well, we don't need to get into the whole backstory because we do have a previous episode where I think you broke down your backstory, and we'll link to that below the episode. So you don't need to tell us how you got started, but I do know there's been quite a journey over the last, 3-ish years since we've probably chatted last. So let's start there. Let's kind of dig in a little bit to, what sort of come up for you over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So the most obvious thing is that for 10 years I did LinkedIn training, and it was like surrounding, teaching people how to revamp their profiles and go get jobs and build their network and that type of thing with Linked Influence, which was like the original program. And then it evolved to a program called 30-Day Sales Machine when I started to see like, okay, I should tie in the sales aspect of this and make it less about getting a job. And then
I still wear those shirts, by the way. 30-Day Sales Machine.
I still have mine.
I'll wear them around, and then people be like, 30-day sale. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, Trevor's awesome.
My wife was giving me the gears about it the other day because I've got about 30 of them still too, and
I think that's why I have 2 of them.
They were the American Apparel ones, so they're super comfy. So you just can't help but like wear them every day.
All right.
So if you guys need more, I'll send you some.
Please.
Yeah. So I guess it was 2 years ago, almost around this time, actually, I started to kind of hit a wall with what we were doing around just straight up selling training. We were really good at it, and we were getting people lots of results and all that kind of stuff, and it felt good, but something was missing. I was seeing people bringing up different questions where I just couldn't help them with what I had created. It was more just tactical, like, here's how to use LinkedIn, as opposed to, here's how to refine your offer so that people actually want to buy your thing. Here's how to create a offer and a product that aligns with your personal values and your vision and your mission so that you don't go crazy just trying to make money. And it happened because of a lot of different things 2 years ago. Part of it was connecting with Scott Oldford, which you guys know Scott as well, and just resonating with his message and his ROI method and stuff. And to fast track the story, I took out $100,000 loan 2 years ago because I was like, I'm going all in to figure out what is this next step is, right? And I knew from 15 years of previous entrepreneur experience of bootstrapping everything and just saying like, oh, I'll figure it out, go watch another webinar, and just didn't have time for that anymore.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, school of hard knocks, I finally decided to just buck up and get a loan. I didn't have the cash flow to actually even pay for some higher level mentoring, but I did invest in one of Scott's programs at that time. And then 3-4 weeks later, our second son was born, and he was born 4 months early, which meant that he was like on the brink of barely surviving. We had lost actually a child at exactly the same birth date. It was like 23 weeks roughly, right? So it was really premature. So then we spent the next 4 months going back and forth to the hospital in the neo-intensive care units, and had every opportunity to quit and, have Scott and his team say like, here's your money back, man. Like, I get it. But I pushed through it. My wife was a big support on it to say like, keep going. Scott and their team were a big support to say like, you got this. I basically realized after I invested that I didn't even invest in a program that was like going to do it for me and give me the framework and anything else. It was basically like a group call where I got around other people that made me feel normal for the first time in my life. And they would spill like they're at 7 figures going to 8, but yet they're broke. Or they were at 8 figures and they were miserable, right? And he just kind of felt like, oh, okay, it's not just me. I'm not crazy for thinking the way that I do. So it was like a big therapy session every single week when we talked. But that's what allowed this program that I created, which is called the Expert Selling Machine. And then it's evolved into an online version called the Expert Selling Academy, to really start incorporating mindset work and foundational stuff in addition to like tactical, like here's how you do this, this, and this. So that's kind of the summary of what's been going on the last 2 years. And it's been up and down, but you know, we're really kind of in a flow here right now. There's really no other way to describe it aside from, you know, I'm creating content with ease. We were talking before, here's my affirmations, right? I create content with ease. I'm no longer fearful of what other people will say or judge me on if I create content. All these things. So it's a good space. I love it. And
that's powerful, man.
And I'm able to serve people better. So it's like win-win for everybody. So I'm just grateful that I'm able to talk about it on shows like this with you guys. Cause I know
thanks for sharing it.
I mean,
you have an audience, and I love your guys' stories too. We obviously have been friends for a long time too.
Right. Yeah. That whole mindset piece of it, I think it's such a piece that I think people that are sort of getting into business, they sort of underestimate, right? Everybody kind of goes, oh yeah, mindset, blah, blah, blah. That's, you know, everybody says that, whatever. And they totally undervalue it. They underestimate the importance of having that mental game strong. But once you sort of realize that even all these people that are out on Facebook showing screenshots of how they did 8 figures last month, you're not getting the whole picture. You don't know if that's profit. It's most likely
probably not.
You know, they probably generated $10 million, but spent $9,999,000 to get it, right? Like, so there's that whole element about it that you're not seeing the whole side of it. But then the other element is there's so much ego involved with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the early stage entrepreneurs, that nobody's willing to admit that they make mistakes. Nobody's willing to admit that they fuck up every once in a while. Nobody's willing to say like, I did $50,000 in sales last month, but I only got to take home $2,000. Nobody's out there talking about it because it hurts their egos. But what we find out as entrepreneurs is that the actual path forward, the actual path to progress, is to be talking about that stuff to people that could potentially give you solutions to those things.
Well, just the fact, Trevor, that you brought up the loan. We've done the same thing in our business.
We're still paying one off.
But it's for the same exact reason. Like, we knew that there was some, you know, the cash flow wasn't there enough for us to invest or to quit something that we were already doing and relying on. Like, prime example is actually a lot of these different offers that we had out there, last year and even just previous years. Obviously, it's great cash flow. It can be, but it takes a lot of energy and focus away from like a business model that we know that we can scale up and do really well on, i.e. like affiliate marketing for us and growing this podcast. It's great, but it's like a total distraction. So we chose to, there's actually mechanisms out there that we all have access to then go double down on this thing that's already working well. And it's cool that you're sharing that because, I think a lot of business owners are even afraid to say like, oh no, I didn't have enough cash at that point. I had to take a loan out, debt out. It's like, that's actually there for a reason.
So, and on that note, actually, so my intention coming into this conversation here too was to not have it just be another how-to. Let me tell you how LinkedIn works, because you just go Google it. Like I got everything you guys need. Just go look it up. You know. But to just have a real conversation around it too, because I think it would actually help people that much more to know the journey. And I mentioned to you guys at the start of this that, it's evolved into this new kind of methodology that we have that we can definitely talk about. But there's another thing that I've never actually even talked about publicly yet that I'll talk about here now. And you guys can share this with the world. But, when I took out that loan and I started this business and we did it with the ups and downs and, we had good months, and exactly like you just said, Matt, we had months where we did 50K, but we spent 60, and then we had months where we did 100 and we were like, all right, we got $1 million business. And then the next month it was 30, that was the real story. And in that time, of course, we were making money and it was ups and downs and there was different profit margins and stuff. But, probably 6 months ago, I looked at it and I was like, holy man, like I've got close to $200,000 in debt to get to this point. And I had actually met somebody at Scott's mastermind that 2 years ago that I kept in touch with, and they were a bit of a partner. I would like refer over business to them with different types of clients that just weren't a good fit for us because they had more of an agency approach, like a growth accelerator kind of a model. And we kept in touch and we kept working together, and we talked like 4 or 5 months ago about the idea of merging and his company actually acquiring my company. And it happened on October 31st of this last year.
Nice.
Yeah, I haven't even talked about it publicly yet. So this is
that's great.
This could be the reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I haven't talked about it publicly for probably a couple of reasons. One, my thought of like, well, what would people think? Like I was running my own business. Now I sold my business. Am I no longer an entrepreneur? The deal, you know, the uniqueness of the deal is that I'm still a contractor to that company. And now I have shares in that bigger business and stuff. But it was just such a false mindset, even up until this point, because I know now the reason that I sold it was, one, to get out of debt, first and foremost. Number two is I realized that I would be better together with this organization because I was solely responsible for sales, marketing, operations, fulfillment, sweeping floors, you name it.
Sure.
And quite honestly, I had had enough. And I knew that if I could only focus on marketing and sales, the two areas that I excel in, and then work on working with clients to deliver exceptional results for them, my business would explode. And it has. In the last 3 months, we've seen this exponential growth that's happening. And it's not to say it's not coming with struggles, because there's integration and software, and it's a major pain in the ass. Like it really is. And it's tough, but I can see the path now much more clear. And another major decision factor for that was constantly revisiting my personal values, which have changed since I had kids, because I get to, at the end of the day, close the computer and go, that thing can wait till tomorrow. And I couldn't do that when I was the sole owner of the business with, 15 people to pay, where if there wasn't enough money in the account, it's on this guy.
Sure.
I don't get paid, they get paid.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a piece of news there that's, it's
huge.
still new.
Yeah.
And it's still new to me. That was something new, like the idea of going through an acquisition. How do you value a business?
Yeah.
How do you value the intangibles of my personal brand and the content I've created and the traffic that we have and all these things? So I've grown a lot in the last few months in an area that I never thought that I'd even be at, because I didn't even think about exit strategy.
Well, I want to dig in really quick on your thought to even do that, because I feel like we've been approached by folks over the years on many different opportunities to partner and do things like that. The main reason we never would is at first we'd be like, oh, that's a really cool opportunity. But then we'd be like, oh, wait, is that the path that we actually are happy with ourselves?
Yeah.
So was there a little bit of that struggle happening as well?
I wouldn't say it was a struggle, because it was basically an 18-month courtship of friendship and partnership leading up to that point in this case. But, if an offer just came in off the street saying, hey, you look like you got a real profitable or a good business that would fit into ours, here's an offer, I don't know if I would have even considered it. So this one was more around, I knew what their values were because they'd gone through We've gone through this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. Vern Harnish is scaling up.
And and traction, right? Like I got them both. Yeah. I think my wife's got traction in the other office right now.
We got both those books up here somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, they see scaling up.
Yeah, they're on there.
But those were things that, like, previous to 2 years ago, I hadn't even thought about. I was just like in the online marketing world. It's like, what's the next launch I can do? What's the next webinar I can do? Let's track my metrics on how many conversions I had.
Tunnel vision.
Eventually, right. I did that for like 4 or 5 years. And eventually you're kind of like, oh man, like you have some good months and some bad months and you just don't see through the other side. So when I saw that these guys were doing the work and they'd created their own value statements and I looked at them, I'm like, yeah, I'm aligned with that.
Yeah.
All right. Like they haven't figured it all out either, but I feel like we can work together to figure it out. So there was a personal relationship there first.
I think that's really powerful, man.
Well, also, I think a lot of people get hung up on titles, right? I think at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is provide value and try to get compensated in return for that value, whether it's as the role of a CEO of another company, as an employee of a company, as an entrepreneur, as a contractor, as a who gives a shit, right? If we're out there and we're finding ways to provide value that people are willing to pay for that value, who cares what title is attached to that? I think where I would start to get hung up is when lifestyle is affected, right? Like if I have to go work for, if I decide I'm going to go take a role at somebody else's company and they want me to show up at the office every morning at 7 a.m. and they want to give me a week of vacation every year, and then all of a sudden, okay,
we're not wired like that.
I have an aversion to that. But if you want me to be your operations manager, or you want me to be your head of marketing for your company, but I get to maintain the same lifestyle I live now and do it on my terms, who gives a shit what the title is?
Yeah. Well, and that's what this deal ended up being, and what some of the criteria of me agreeing to it too was like, LinkedIn to Leads is my parent company, essentially. Expert Selling is the brand of like products that we sell. They both still exist as completely separate business units. We don't have any like operating as a division of Irrational Marketing, which is the company that did the acquisition.
I like that name too.
Yeah. Right. So that was one piece of it, which was like, continue as is. You guys serve an audience that they didn't serve, but they also saw that serving of that audience was going to lead to clients that would graduate to their level of type of service that they offer, right? So it's just such a good fit that way. And then the other side of it was for me, like I ended up, with some cash, but also with some profit share opportunities and some equity in that business. So there was a lot of incentive in all that. And I'm a contractor to that company. I'm not an employee.
Yeah.
So I run my own departments and I'm accountable. I'm accountable to, daily rocks and KPIs and that type of thing, which quite honestly, I freaking needed you guys.
Yes. Dude, we do as well. We've been going through very similar, the three of us are on a very similar path.
Yeah. And I figured so. And we just hadn't really dug into it. That's why I thought I'd bring it up. It might be a good topic.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching a video last night with it's random, Jay Leno driving around in his car. He has like one of those, like, he was taking it was a Lamborghini, and he was picking up Trevor Noah from The Daily Show. And I was like, I was just YouTube binging just mindlessly. But Trevor said something on there, and that guy's so damn passionate. He was like, I realized that when you figure out what your calling is in life, that's your life just changes. Like everything opens up and you just have this drive and you're like pretty much unstoppable. And for him, that was, or is, stand-up comedy. It's not being on TV and all that shit. But he realized that's what created him in his path. And he identified that, I think he said at like 25, because Jay was almost like discounting comedy. And he's like, no, Jay, it's actually backwards. That's the thing that's opened up everything else. And life was never the same after that. And then I started thinking, I'm like, shit, that really is it. And it's kind of like what you're talking about is like you've identified, and what I've been working on a lot is like really honing in what are the handful of things or one thing to really be the best in. And then life literally opens up to you. And partnerships are a good thing then. It's like, yeah, cool. Well, values are aligned. I could do what I'm really good at, and you've identified that. And I could serve more people to, fuck yeah, let's do this.
Well, and that's why I like the framework of scaling up and Rockefeller habits and traction and that type of thing, and companies that actually implement it. Because like one of the very first things we did was the elevate and delegate task. Have you guys gone through that before?
No, not probably.
I'm sort of familiar with the concept, but I haven't gone through their exercises.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a 4-quadrant thing, which I might butcher what it actually is, but it's like, what's something that you're really good at that you hate? What's something that you're really good at that you love? And then in between that, right?
Okay.
And what it does, and it goes back to what you were saying, Matt, which is like, don't lay this, label on me of I'm the CMO. No, I'm a specialist in sales and marketing and client fulfillment and coaching and that type of thing. Those are my core skill sets.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else on our team, they have core skill sets. It was really funny because when we started doing that, I had one person on my team who I had no idea that she was actually a good writer. I just never asked, But doing the exercise, we're like, oh, you're a good writer and we need to fill that gap there. Do you want to do this? And she's like, yeah. And all of a sudden now she's inspired. She's doing better work and everybody's winning. So that's where that alignment came in for me too, was like, okay, wait a second, I can actually just focus on the things that I want to do. Like, I don't do payroll anymore.
How cool is
You
that?
have no idea how much of a relief that is to me.
Yeah.
Well, admin stuff. Yeah. It's like all this BS stuff that is necessary, but like, you're not happy doing that. That's not your best work. Someone else might light up and just be monotonous and do that all day. Cool.
Yeah. Especially when you partner with other people or you get acquired and they have people like that, or they have companies that they work with or that they're acquiring that can fill in those gaps. It just makes for I think the other thing that came up for me, and again, this was just a limiting belief and a mindset thing, was that I always used to look at the agency model as like the devil. Like I used to be like, I'm not building an agency. There's no way, right?
I still kind of do. But you might change my mind with this conversation. So,
well, because I had been in an agency too, where I saw just the dysfunction of like, you know, going from 20 to 50 to 100 employees and just how chaotic it was. But it was because there wasn't the foundation of some of this work. And usually this work is hard. And that's why I say, like, since October 31st, we've had 1, 2, 3 months worth of integration. Here's our software, here's our systems, here's our people. Now we're into daily like huddles in the morning, and we got department meetings and stuff. And like, it's a struggle. It's a change of habits, but oh man, we can just see so much more momentum to go through it. Right.
It's interesting you bring that up, because this is where Matt and I have been talking a lot. I feel like you're just like, you might be 3 months ahead of us, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
From the sound of it. So, because I put a note down, like, I really got to actually read scaling, because that's one I've kind of like, I purchased, but I flipped through. I'm like, I don't think I'm there yet. I'm more in the traction phase and like all that stuff starting.
I'm in the same boat, man.
Yeah, I know you are.
This thing barely even looks like it's been opened, because it hardly hasn't.
Mine just looks
flipped through it too.
Yeah, mine's just fresh. It just hasn't even opened.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it almost reminds me a little too much of like a school textbook when I start to flip through it, that I have like almost like a subconscious aversion to reading it, because it reminds me of being back in college.
Yeah, totally.
But back to it's a good point. That it reads like, but maybe that's a good thing, because the frameworks and it's clear. But something that we've been talking a lot about is containing ourselves in different areas. So if that's working times, and we talked about, you know, having kind of a structure more or less around how long are we working, what are we doing, what's the business model, and really making sure all of our focus is contained within these parameters. And I was looking at myself, I'm like, and this is where, from the outside, it looks like I don't like containment, because I'm more the hustle side of this whole thing, which is great. But at the same time, I know I do my best work when I have a structure around me. And it's going to be fucking brutal for probably like 3 months, this integration period. But I know that it creates this groove in my mind and these habits to actually perform at a level that I want to show up as in the world. And because if I don't have that, mentally I will beat myself up, because I'm like, shit, I know I'm capable of doing this stuff, but there might be some blockage. It could be like, oh, well, we need to partner up with someone, or I need to hire, or just stop doing that. Yeah. And I think the constraints, that's a word, I was not containment, but constraints are really helpful, even if it feels like you're not good with constraints. It's like, no, they're probably actually best for you, but just hack it out for a period of time.
Yeah. And I think we just need the carrot too, right? It's like, you got to kind of see what is that consistency and going through the painful process of changing your habits. And, you know, like if you guys are the business unit right now, like, do you got a daily routine? Do you check in at 8 a.m. every morning and have this is one of the things we do is an executive huddle. It's from 9:15 to 9:19. There's 4 people on it, and you have 60 seconds, not a minute more, not a second more, right? And you have to summarize, what are you doing in the next 24 hours? And then where are you stuck? That's it.
And it forces them to think about it in advance too.
Yeah.
And it gets you understanding what the other person's doing and where they're at in their mind too, because you may be able to go, oh, no, I talked to a guy yesterday. It's solved already, right? And all of a sudden it's gone. You might burn a whole half a day on something that's already been solved.
So good.
Yeah. But we need the incentive on the other side to go like, what's the point of this painful process? It's kind of like working out for the first time after years and years, you know?
It's true.
What am I going to get out of this? Well, you'll get in better shape.
That's true.
You might live a little longer.
It's like have a goal in mind, but also fall in love with the process of getting there, even if you don't totally get there, because typically a goal is not in your control. And this is something Matt and I have been talking a lot but have this constraint and this structure, this mechanism that makes you happy, but like brings the best out of you. And then stay consistent, but have the carrot in mind, but also just have the carrot of like, I'm fucking good enough to complete this thing and actually stay true to my word. That the carrot is almost like icing on the cake more than a carrot at that point. It's fucking awesome. But at the same time, you're like lit up just through the process.
Yeah. I think that, where that analogy started, I think was one of my biggest ahas that I've had of probably the last like decade of being in business, is the fact that you're never going to be happy with your business until the work that you're doing on a daily basis is the thing that brings you fulfillment, right? Yeah. If you're always thinking that the end result that this work is going to create is the thing that's going to bring me fulfillment, you will never fucking be happy, because when you get to that point, the goalpost just moves. You get to that point and you go, cool, we had our first $100,000 month. We did it. Yay. How do we push this goalpost even further? Let's get $150,000 month next month. The goalpost always moves and moves and moves. And you're always in that place of, I'm not quite happy where I am right now. Where if you make the conscious decision that the things that I do on a daily basis are the things that light me up, the fulfillment comes from the work and not the result. Once you sort of realize that I need to be happy on a daily basis with whatever I'm doing, then it's game over, and everything just kind of starts to fall into place and feel effortless, because you're happy with where you're at, not waiting for a result to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that just brings up a million directions we could take this, but specifically for me, like now that I have the time to really focus on sales process and how does our marketing fit in with sales process to educate people further. So when I get on calls with them, I'm not selling anymore. Like they already kind of know that they need our help. Now it's just, can I help them overcome their own limiting fear beliefs of why they can't do what they think they can do? So it's really like, I love it, but the thing that I struggle with still, and I constantly work towards, is that even when you start getting into a sales mindset, you're focused on the win, right? Which is like the sale,
the outcome. Yeah,
but I find it's the same thing. And we were talking about, you guys are speaking, of course, at Digital Marketer. Whenever I haven't done a lot of speaking on stages in the last little bit, I'm going to get back into it, but I always loved it because there was such a high to it.
Right.
I felt like it was like when I was playing hockey back in the day. It's like you're on, it's up to you. But then the low would come, right? As soon as you step off stage and the crowd of people that wanted to come up and, ask you questions is over, you're kind of back to like, all right, what's next?
Yeah.
It's the same for sales with me. And that's part of the thing that we're working on as a team too, is like how to celebrate more than just the financial success.
Yeah.
And enjoy the journey. So it's not this high of like, a deal closed. And then like, oh man, now I got to go find another one. And,
Yeah. Dude, that's what really... Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's this whole thing of falling in love with the process. Like I have a buddy, he actually went to high school with me, and he is going to be in the Olympics this year, running the marathon. And he's been in trials before and all that stuff. And I was basically talking about like his process and all that stuff. He's like, man, I am completely obsessed with working my best, like my waking up early and just doing the work. I freaking love it, he said. And he's like, I don't care if I place or medal or any of that. It's doing the work. And the fact that, like even if he doesn't get into the Olympics for some reason, the trials and all that stuff, even though I think he's good, like that wouldn't even matter. It's just the fact that he actually put himself out there because he's capable. He's the fastest guy I've ever met. And and the dude, he just got obsessive with his daily practices. And I think that brings like the biggest happiness if we can identify that in our work day and life, obviously, in general.
Yeah, I think you can look at like any sort of billionaire or multimillionaire or ultra successful in this financial sense. Look at any of them, and you could sort of trace back an obsession that they had. It's almost always born out of an obsession, meaning that they found a process, they fell in love with the process, they became obsessed with the process, they became obsessed with becoming the best at that process, so much to the point that it led to great financial rewards. Doesn't necessarily mean those people are happy and they found success in relationships and happiness and other forms of fulfillment. Financial needs are only one need among many that we all have. But I think the ones that are very financially successful, you could trace back to an obsession. And I think you can also look at anybody who's like ultra enlightened or spiritual with like an obsession too. Like you look at the like monks and stuff, right? Those people, they became obsessed with that process of finding enlightenment, and that's why they are ultra successful in that specific thing that they dedicated their life to. Yeah. And so there's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, and that's so like just in the last couple of weeks, I just created a video that I posted on LinkedIn about this, because we have a major mindset set component in our program, which causes me to like go deep on this stuff, right? It's like do the work too. You can't just be on the sidelines telling, up at the top of the mountain, pulling people up. You got to be up there, right? So it's caused me to change the statement that I have on my personal website that is essentially a mission statement, The evolution went from me talking about myself, because I was like, I'm going to talk about the things that are important to me. It's like family and mission and legacy. And then I realized like nobody gives a shit, and then it evolved to what I thought it was supposed to be, which was more marketing speak around like, I empower solopreneurs to connect with their most valuable prospects to right? Because you see that everywhere, right? It's like you were saying, and this is where the balance of sales and marketing comes in too, Joe, is sell them what they want and then give them what they need. There's still an element of that from a marketing mindset where I'm like, maybe I should not try and sell them the big picture because it might be too much, Right. But finally, just the other day, I was just like, what, screw it. I'm going to make the statements. And this is what I have on my personal website now. I empower solopreneurs to create generational wealth by building a repeatable, predictable, and measurable client acquisition system. And to me, that's defined by what we've been talking about. So repeatable, predictable, and measurable isn't, holy shit, I need to go get a client because I got to pay my bills. It's that, and how am I going to get the next client when I lose the last one? And then how in 6 months from now, or how once I've got 3 clients and I'm too busy fulfilling, am I going to keep that engine turning, that machine going, so that there's always new people coming in at different stages? Because that's what creates our ability to close the computer and walk away and know that it's set, right?
Yeah.
And then the generational wealth side of things, where that kind of came into it, was the idea of like, it's not just about me, it's about my kids. And not just financially, it's also like teaching them that failing is not a bad thing. It's about having them having a different money mindset than I did, because I grew up with parents that said, it's the Turnbull way to be in debt. And like,
Yeah.
And every time they had extra money, they went and bought a boat. And like, I'm not complaining. I had a great childhood. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not where I want it to be. I want to be in a place where I don't have to think about having to debt finance everything. And that was, again, why I sold my business. Was I spent 10 years doing this stuff. Like that's a good hustle.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That hustle was real. And I put in my 10,000 hours. I know my stuff. Like, I just know it. So now it's time to create something that works for me that will actually serve my clients better. That's why I sold my business.
I think that's amazing. And that's a good framing too that you put on it. Is for 10 years, I mean, we're in a very similar boat, albeit like it's seemed a little more I don't know, it's because I'm so close. I think it's all like not the same thing, but at the end of the day, we've done the same thing around content and conversions and just teaching in general. And it's just like you have done with LinkedIn as the primary focus. People identify, and there's a reason why there's a time for change. If you don't want to keep sustaining what you've built in the previous, in our cases, around 10 years. And having that shift, can open up, who knows what's next for you, man. Like after this transition period, holy crap. Well, it feels in alignment with what we're teaching too, which is around like 2 key words, focus and action. So like, I didn't create publish content consistently up until
a month and a half ago. Like literally, I never had a consistent content strategy.
Yeah, I want to talk about this, but keep going.
Yeah. And then eventually I was just like, you know what? I should actually do this and see how it works, because I've always kind of used it as a resistance point. Like, oh, you don't need to do that. Just have a prospecting strategy and just keep working the numbers, you know? And then I started to do it and I was like, holy shit, like this stuff actually works. And it's actually going to live on too. Just like you guys, when you do blog content and these podcasts, this podcast is created for that purpose.
That's right. Ideally, these things are immortal. Ideally, somebody is going to be listening to this episode 100 years from now, finding insights from the ancient philosophers of the 2020s.
The internet marketing.
We got to dust it off for you.
Yes. These podcasts are the encyclopedias that people are going to find in those hidden underground libraries someday and go, those ancient philosophers, Matt, Joe, and Trevor.
Yeah.
Very ancient.
You mean when our kids are working for agencies just programming AI bots and stuff for marketing and there's no longer human interaction?
No, it's just going to be like WALL-E, where they're all just fat and inside of wheelchairs and the food just comes to them.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that where the world's going, right?
No,
you got like
I don't want it
Grubhub,
to.
you've got like everything comes to you now. You don't have to leave your house anymore.
It does. Oh, and I want to get back to this content.
Sorry, that was a tangent.
Hence the home office. Hence why I actually have the mission that I do around the solopreneur too, because you guys would essentially be defined as solopreneurs, and then you kind of like partnerpreneured up.
Yeah.
But you get it. Like you wear all hats, you work out of the home office, you're looking at the office, but you're like, commutes. That's why I left the agency world, you know, like,
right.
I want to help people like that, because I know what it's like not only to go do all the things, but also to get in your head and to think like, oh man, this isn't working. And man, my wife's really on me right now because we struggled that month. And it's a mind. Yeah. It's a mind.
We've all been there.
Mind bender, man.
And I think everybody listening to this has probably been there, but not enough people are talking about it. And not enough people are.
Totally.
And I honestly think that, you know, well, what's the solution? I think the solution is talking about it. I think the solution is saying, look, we're all experiencing these struggles. We all go through this shit in our business. We all have months where we're trying to figure out how to pay the bills sometimes, right? Most entrepreneurs that have been on the show, most entrepreneurs that you're paying attention to have had those months. And the only way to sort of get over it is to realize that you're not alone in that. We're all experiencing this. Yeah. And so I think that's why talking about it is so important. Not necessarily coming to solutions, but just the act of talking about it is a solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's basically not making this a taboo feeling or a topic anymore. It's just letting it out. It's like we brought up the whole thing around stress, anxiety, suicide, all that stuff with entrepreneurs. And then that got a lot more of our guests to actually open up, because, you know, future guests are listening to our previous episodes and, you know, they're like, holy crap, you said this, you guys have gone through some shit. And then that opens them up. So it's almost like in our little sphere, our ecosystem, we're starting to slowly open more and more. And dude, hats off to you too for sharing everything you have. Yeah. Obviously you're doing this outside of just this, but it's
we also
powerful.
very much knew that you were open to talking about kind of anything, because the way that we initially met essentially was we were all kind of coming out of a training program, which was a very vulnerable, emotional sort of program that we were all in together. So we knew that these conversations would likely come up when we chat together, because that's sort of how that was sort of the genesis of all of our relationships.
Helped a lot. Yeah.
And this is where the marketing mind of myself still goes back to, like, maybe I should sell them what they think they want and then give them what they need, because that's how I got into MITT too, was Lewis came to me and said, dude, you want this business to explode? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I've got the perfect leadership program for you. I'm like, I'm in. Let's do this, right? It's like, I'm going to learn the skills that I need to be a better leader, and my business is going to excel. And then it was just the complete opposite of what I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
That's exactly what I needed.
That's true. They very much kind of sell you what you think you want and then give you what you need to hear once you're in it.
Yeah. And obviously we're not going to talk about all this stuff because I think we're sworn to secrecy.
That's a way deeper rabbit hole than we have time to go into.
But you're right. Like, the whole thing is, and that's what we found with these episodes, you brought it up in the recording we did earlier, is typically the episodes where we go deep on mindset and all that stuff, talk about anxiety, stresses, or just struggles of a business owner, less the tactical strategies of like LinkedIn strategy. Here's how you're going to grow your email list, blah, 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 using this specific framework. The mindset episodes just don't get as many downloads, like people clicking into them. I really think we need to be more clickbaity with the titles. Probably.
I try to go as clickbaity
Again, that's
as
where the
possible with the
marketing
titles. I don't know how to go more clickbaity.
I know. But it's interesting because this is it's to your point is, maybe it's not doctored up enough, but it's the episodes we get the most reactions from and feedback, and people saying, holy crap, thank you for sharing this. This just connected the dots in my own brain. Do more of this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the download numbers compared to the feedback. So there's an impact happening with all this. And
and I mean, ideally, we're not going to stop talking about this kind of stuff. So ideally, the sort of audience might shift into the people who love hearing this kind of stuff, and all the people that are like, fuck those guys, they didn't teach me how to drive paid Twitter ads on this episode. Like, we still will have episodes like that. We still really, really enjoy talking about that, but this kind of stuff is what people really need to hear.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, maybe we should start talking about some what your big shift with the content marketing was.
I want to talk about the content piece, because that is a struggle for a lot of folks. And how'd you get around that?
Yeah, well, it ties into what we were just talking about, which was I overthought everything up until about 2 months ago. And again, I was out of alignment with what I was selling. And I have a mindset mentor who's in our program. Her name's Danielle Grant. You guys look her up as well. She's amazing. But the reason why she came into our program was somehow she came into my world, whatever it was, it was probably an ad or something, right? But then I started to just resonate with what she was talking about. And it was the same shit as everybody else. She's not coming up with any unique ideas. It's all regurgitated and thrown into a kaleidoscope, as Mark Twain says, and twisted around,
Yep.
But she was consistent with it. And I noticed it for like a year. And eventually she happened to be where we live now in Kelowna. So I was like, I'm going to reach out to her when I get there, because I just feel like there's a synergy. And we did. Now she's in the program. She holds me accountable just like everybody else. But she called me out one day and she's like, dude, you keep telling people to like create content as a part of this process, this framework that you've created, but you don't create any content. I was like, yeah, I should do that. She's like, should, or you will, and by when? I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I had to think, okay, well, what am I going to use for content? And, we could dive down that rabbit hole forever too, but we just went back to the well. What do I have? Document it. There's your first 20 pieces right there, Yep. And then the next one was, what are all, and this is how I like to teach it typically, is we called it our passionate rant challenge inside of our community. It's like, what are the things that you either complain about in your head that about why your prospect didn't buy and why they're stupid for not buying from you, or the client that won't listen to you because you know better, but they just won't listen to you. Like, what are all those things? And create content around that. And then also around like, why are you doing what you're doing? So I started doing that. And I do these live Q&As every week with our paid members inside of our academy. And I just started ranting about stuff. Like, some of them were off the wall, like just total rants, And the best converting ones, which by the way, have nothing to do with likes, comments, and shares. My content barely gets any engagement. Now, it's something that I'm actually trying to enhance and fix, because I know that it'll be better if I can get more engagement, but it doesn't matter. I've sold at least $150,000 worth of contracts in the last month just because I'm publishing content on LinkedIn. And the only reason I know that is because it came up in the sales conversation. Those people didn't like, comment, and share on anything. I got on calls and they're like, yeah, I'm here because I saw that 3-minute video you did about why you should charge for creating a proposal. And I thought it was unique. And I've been in your email list for 3 years, and I thought maybe we should reconnect again. I'm now in charge of sales and marketing in this company. And all of a sudden, it resonated with them. We're on the call, and now sales process kicks in. And this is what I like to do. So it was a major aha moment for me. And as I started digging into it, though, I started to realize that there's challenges for people, including myself, around ideas and creation and distribution and repurposing. And then also around fear of judgments and the mindset component, because that's what it was for me. It's like, I already knew my stuff. I've been doing this for 10 years, but I wouldn't say it out loud. Like, honestly, there's still a part of me that, if I was to be speaking at traffic and conversion, like you guys are, imposter syndrome kicks in, where it's like, oh man, what am I going to say to these people? Everybody's doing kind of the same thing. And then I realized, like, just talk about what you do and the little 1 or 2 tweaks that are a little unique, because you're going to say something to somebody that's going to resonate for them and it'll be valuable.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the value of that kaleidoscope, as you quoted, Mark Twain, is that's a way to connect with the audience, even if you're fresh. And like, that's what these little blurps of content do. But you put your little twist on there. There's like a little thing that people are like, oh crap, that was worth my time. I like Trevor. I need to talk to him now.
Yeah.
And even because we experience the same exact thing with these podcasts and people on our list.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely been there. We've done quite a handful of speaking gigs just recently. Just last year, we kind of started doing speaking gigs and getting up on stages. And I think we always kind of went into it going, okay, we're talking about podcasting. I mean, how relevant is this going to be to the people in this room? And I know me personally, I can't speak for Joe, but there was a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, why are we talking about podcasting to probably a room of 80% of the people here probably don't care about podcasting, but that 20% that were interested, we've actually built amazing relationships with that 20%. And we're still talking to a lot of them. Some of them became clients of ours. Some of them we do like mentoring with now. And some of them it's turned into like a really great thing. And I think a lot of people, speaking into what you're talking about, I think a lot of people think about who this is not benefiting as opposed to like, who am I actually making an impact on?
Right. Yeah. Focus and action too, right? Like that's one thing that I've been very admiring of what you guys have done with the podcast here is like you've stuck with it. You just keep going, and it's evolving. It's repurposing into different ways. So it evolves over time, and I'm just starting to get a feel for that and starting to see the power of like actually being consistent with something.
Sure.
It works. It just works.
Consistency is where it's at. And with a system, it goes back to constraints, like not trying to be everywhere. And that's what I think is powerful is you have LinkedIn. That is your focus. I mean, that's not new to you. So it's for us, it's not LinkedIn, maybe in the future with a better strategy because we don't have one, but I know you have one. But like Facebook, that's where our people live. At least right now, we have a pretty good strategy there. Tons of engagement, and it's a perfect place that we can cultivate our audience and have. I mean, with content, it's almost like this reframe. It's just us communicating with folks that want to connect with us, or are connected with us, or discovering with us. It's almost like the content word can kind of trip up people's brains a little bit and overcomplicate things. It's like, no. All you gotta do is just like literally take a little topic that you think can resonate with this person over there. Just look at them as a friend of yours, a peer in a mastermind. You're sitting around a table and you're like, you know what? This content repurposing strategy we use, I think people would love to hear about it. Here's a 3-minute talk about it. Bam, go. There's your content. And it's like just communicating. Execute it.
Yeah, one of the things that Scott Oldford preached to me over the last year, I went to one of his other masterminds in October, I think it was, but he was saying how like he doesn't follow anybody anymore. He's just on his own path. I shouldn't say anybody. He's got like 2 or 3 people that he follows. So like anybody listening to this podcast, here's a piece of advice for you and a piece of software. One, pick one, maybe two podcasts to focus on and just consume it and then go execute the things that they're talking about. So this podcast, just focus on this podcast.
Yes.
And then secondly, like one thing that, and this was just in the last couple of weeks or a month or so, is I installed the Facebook newsfeed eradicator plugin on Google Chrome. Oh my God. Best thing that I've ever done for my content production process and just build out of my own frameworks, because I stopped looking at everybody else's shit and overthinking it, And it allows me, when I'm sitting with my kids who are restless and not wanting to sleep, I'm not scrolling Facebook on the phone anymore, like I'm sitting there and I'm, sometimes I'm watching highlights, but other times I'll listen to an audio tape. Other times I'm just sitting there and trying to like connect with my kids. Imagine that. Imagine that.
There's actually a cool Chrome extension. I don't remember the name now because I don't have it installed anymore, but it's basically Newsfeed Eradicator, but it leaves all the ads. So you can actually scroll through Facebook and all you see is the ads that you would have gotten targeted with. And that's that one I find beneficial because I'm just sitting there screenshotting shit.
Yeah. That serves that side of it, of the marketer in you wanting to kind of see what other people are doing.
Exactly.
It's funny. I was literally on Twitter the other day because we're experimenting with some Twitter ads right now, and I'm like, I need to build out my swipe file, and I was like, God, all of these people are annoying. Just get me to the ads. And I was just scrolling through Twitter, like ignoring all of the tweets, just trying to find the ads.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that too, because we're just starting to experiment with LinkedIn ads ourselves too. We've never done anything on it, just mostly because I've always thought, it's too expensive, but it's mostly around like, I haven't had time to really fully dive into it. And it can be expensive if you just go and like play around with it. So we're now at the point where we can put a dedicated strategy behind it. And we thought we'd have an ad up in 2 days. And then we realized like, oh damn, like we better spend like some time and document like, what's the standard operating procedure of running LinkedIn ads? What assets do you need? What audiences can you target? All these things. And now we're going to experiment and we'll share that with people.
Good.
But it's actually part of this framework that we have now because, when people ask me like, should I run LinkedIn ads? I'll say, do you have these 9 things done first? Are they dialed in? No, then no.
Then don't touch them.
Yeah. No, we actually saw one of the proposals that you made for somebody else to help with LinkedIn. I won't name any names or anything, but I noticed that like one of the last things is ad strategy, and it said not recommended at this time. You got to do all this other stuff first.
It's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's. I want to focus in on the content strategy, like with you specifically, and obviously you're seeing a lot with your clients. Yeah. Like what got you to get to that consistency mode, and how have you like dropped some of this friction with creating content? Like what does it look like, and how can folks listening, if they're struggling to create content, how can you start to kind of move in that direction?
Well, the simplest things that we found, number one, was usually people have content already that can just be repurposed and just made in different ways and just needs to be distributed again. But we don't do it because we think, well, I already published that blog post. I can't repurpose it on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn article. I can't chop a piece out and add it as a LinkedIn post. I can't create a video around it because I've already done it, which is not true, because whoever you're getting connected with now, they're never going to find it unless they deep dive into, 50 podcast episodes, like in your guys' case, right?
Yeah.
That's where you guys creating podcast content and having really good show notes and taking good notes around like, here's the 5 nuggets that are 3 minutes long. That would be really great clips. Like, I don't know what you guys do right now with these videos, but we've talked about 10 topics already that could easily be clips, right?
Oh yeah. You'll see these videos. People listening to this episode will probably see clips from these videos floating around.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that was one of the big aha moments for me, because again, I was saying I was doing live Q&As and I was kind of like reluctantly doing them because how it is. You have an online program. We've got, I think, 300 or 400 people that pay for our online program, and nobody shows up to the damn live Q&As.
It's so common. Yeah.
But so at first you're kind of like, well, why am I doing this? And then the second part, you're like, wait a second. This is a blocked off time every week that I could focus on just creating content. And then I was like, oh, double dipping here,
I've actually never really thought of it from that angle, because we experienced the same issue where we had membership sites, and I think we always did like a month live call, and we'd have like 1,000 members in the membership thing, and 10 people would show up to the call, and we're like, or worse, sometimes we'd have like 2 people show up to the call, and we're just like, well, our whole content strategy was to answer your questions, and if there's only 2 people here, this is not going to last very long.
No.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is like, because it's just like I said with me publishing content on LinkedIn. If people go look at my LinkedIn profile and you go to my posts, you'll see that I get like 2 likes and 1 comment on every single video that I do. But it's making money, so I don't really care. At the same time, my ego and my marketer brain says, imagine if that was super engaging and there was a ton of more views and I could incorporate an ad strategy that gets those videos more into the stream. So to me, it's 2 ways to look at it. One is like, oh man, this isn't working, or, oh my God, there's so much potential here. Look at what we're doing without even amplifying the content that we're creating.
That's how I'm seeing it. It's like you're laying a great a framework here, a foundation, and you're leveraging a platform that and it's not a platform you can control necessarily. You don't own it, but you're leveraging it in these strategic ways to then bring them into your own space. It's the whole thing of you're relying on it a little bit, but at the same time, you have relationships you're building that can carry over into your own thing that you can control and follow up with. And I think that's the it's hugely powerful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and and I think people, because I know us with LinkedIn, we'll look at it and be like, man, there's not a lot of engagement on there. So that will actually stop us from posting on there and making that a strategy that's consistent. Right now, it's just haphazard because of that, because we're not on sales calls necessarily. But at the same time, we know people are looking on there and you can see the views. So it's like 100% people are watching. They're just not necessarily pushing a button.
So are you familiar with Sean Stevenson, the late Sean Stevenson? Passed away just a few months back. But he was on stage at one time and he was doing like a Q&A session, and somebody walked up to the mic and and asked him a question, and he said, and I'm totally butchering it, this is just sort of my recollection, but he said something like, I've got a YouTube channel. It only gets like 300 downloads per video that I put up. If you were me, what would you do to try to like boost my YouTube channel? How do I get my videos in front of more people? And Sean said, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Basically, he was saying, so if there was a plane crash tomorrow and 300 people were on that plane and all of them were gone, would that be a big impact on the world? Would everybody be sort of devastated and hurt by the fact that we just lost 300 souls? And the person at the mic was like, yeah, of course, that'd be horrible. And he's like, so those 300 souls are valuable, but the 300 souls that you just put that YouTube video in front of aren't? You're focusing on the wrong thing. Stop thinking about the people that you're not impacting and start thinking about the people that you are impacting.
Yeah. And that speaks to what I think you were asking about too, Joe, was like, how am I going about the content? I call them rants, but honestly, it's just me like speaking the truth now and helping people get out of their own damn way.
Yeah.
Because I know that I don't care what somebody does to be able to get into a better situation in their life. Just go and stick to it. Because I know we've been doing our process long enough that if you do it, it works. It just works. But 99% of people don't do it. They just don't, So I talk about that honestly. Like usually the last 10 minutes of my live Q&As are me going off saying like, if you do anything, just focus on that one thing that we talked about today and then report back and let me know, because I'll keep you accountable. And, I want to create a greater impact even than we already are right now. But I know I need to show up talking as though I'm speaking to one person at a time.
Yeah. And you're changing that life. And just think about, and now the fact that you're distributing that content in these little nugget forms on a bigger platform that can now affect all of these other people out there. And a lot of them you'll probably never talk to. And that's okay. But like, it's this positive effect, this ripple you're putting out into the world. And it's just a byproduct of what you're already doing on a one-to-one base or one-to-many basis where you do get feedback. Yeah. So I think as a content strategy, this is an amazing way to start. It's almost like identify what you're already going to do in your business and serve, like who you're serving, whoever that might be. And then from there, figure out a good repurposing strategy. And then connect that with a platform. Probably start with one platform that you're kind of familiar with and just be consistent as hell with that. Be consistent on both fronts, creating the content, but also the repurposing on that platform. Not trying to be everywhere. That's the downfall.
For sure. Yeah, and know where your audience is too, right? Like I know my perfect audience. My audience is on Facebook too. They are. I know that. And we were running Facebook ads for the last year up until about a month ago. And we stopped, partially because Facebook's been a bit of a pain in the ass just with the ads shutdowns and all that kind of stuff. But also, I just saw how noisy it was getting. And I also saw the calls that I was getting on. Those people were doing like what we talked about earlier, is like they were looking for LinkedIn lead generation solution. And if I talk to somebody about LinkedIn lead generation solution as the opener of my conversation, I'd rather just throw them back into the sea and say, you should just go watch my videos. Everything I teach is completely free. Because you're not ready for what I have to offer as a transformation in your business yet. So we pulled off of Facebook and now we're focusing on LinkedIn, which is why I say we're going to invest in LinkedIn ads, because we know that if people are there, and my LinkedIn ad, by the way, is like this. It's like, hey, I'm glad I got your attention. I'm going to keep this brief because I know you're probably in here looking for prospects. Why else would you be in LinkedIn, right? You're probably in your inbox and you're looking to see if that connection request got accepted, and it probably didn't, and you're probably disappointed. Does this resonate? Cool. Here's what I got for you. And then I'll call to action to somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Straight to the point. I can actually be more direct because I know they're there to do business. They're not there to kind of do business, but also to check the sports scores and to see what their friends are up to. And it's a totally different mindset of a person that's in LinkedIn.
Where can people go to watch the free content that you've been putting out around LinkedIn? Because I think going into this conversation, I think we thought we might talk more about LinkedIn, but I actually really like where the conversation went instead. But I do want to point people to where, like, hey, I want to go down that LinkedIn rabbit hole. I want to learn what Trevor has to offer for LinkedIn. Where's a good place for them to kind of dip their toes in and start down that free content?
Yeah. So just go to my LinkedIn profile and then go into the activity area in my posts, and you'll see all kinds of different videos in there. But, if you opt into anything on any of my websites, you're going to end up in email sequences that'll send you LinkedIn profile training. And here's the LinkedIn scripts that work for us to reach out to your existing first degree network. And here's a checklist of do this, then do this, then do this. Like, here's the process. And then like our online program, we've got all kinds of trainings in there. We've got a free Facebook group. It's called the Empowered Solopreneurs Group. So you can just go search for that. We're posting stuff in there all the time. The paid one is like a library full of content in there as well. And we run different promotions throughout the year to get people in, knowing that there's always, 50 people will come in and 10 will do the work and one will upsell into what we actually do to really help people. But it's all over the place. You can, and just reach out to me. That's the other thing that around the LinkedIn side of things too. So, one of the things that people are always looking for when they're Googling LinkedIn lead generation is like, how do I automate this? And that's another big trigger for me to go, you're talking to the wrong person, because we don't automate anything. We create scalable solutions through virtual assistants and scripting and that type of thing, but everything we track. So like if you message me on LinkedIn, I'm never in my LinkedIn inbox. I've got 3 other people that help me manage it, but I never miss a message.
Right.
I guarantee you message me that I will get it if it's directed to me. And tell me that you listen to this podcast, because then I have some context, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's
just
perfect.
another stream. And I think that level of personalization goes a long ways too.
For sure.
And it's part of the reason why I sent you guys that big long checklist too of like, here's what you would do if you are somebody that has an audience already or has an inbox, which both of you guys probably do, of connection requests in LinkedIn. And you're like, I don't even know what to do with this. And I certainly don't have time to respond to everybody on there. I get it. So you have to figure out a way to remove you from the process without losing the personalization side of it.
Gotcha.
That's essentially what I've created with this method.
Got it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. And it's something that we can use, but yeah, before all that, definitely go check out Trevor's free stuff out there, because there's probably a lot to learn before jumping into the deep end and automating, not automating, the whole LinkedIn process, if that resonates with whoever's listening here. And I think it's smart that you're not automating with software, because I think that's like against terms typically anyway. So it's like, the personal approach works.
Well, and more importantly, the reason why we went down that path, because it does take longer but it does create better quality conversations and connections. You don't miss things where somebody responds to you and you respond with a script that's totally unrelated. But the major core reason why we did this, and everybody listening can probably resonate, is that in the last year in particular, this space of like, I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, and I do it virtually through Zoom meetings is so saturated that if you're using old tactics and automated tactics to like mass market, you're dead in the water. Like, just quit right now. Go get a job. Like
how much more of this process after I give you my money is going to be automated?
Good point.
You have to find a way to stand out, and standing out actually means go back to things that don't seem like they make sense. Like, go back to things that used to work.
That don't seem scalable, but really you can.
I literally have a book on my somewhere that says it's called "Do Things That Don't Scale."
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's all about that kind of stuff. It's all about businesses need to get back to more human connection, more one-on-one, more, doing things that just you can't scale. You just got to be a human again.
Which is why, the marketer brain in all of us though goes, okay, I get that, but like, come on, seriously, like I'm gonna do this. Like, no.
So there needs
there needs to be an in-between, which in-between is usually just standard operating procedure. Do this in this scenario and do this, right? And then in order to actually scale that, and this goes back to what we first started talking about, is like, how do you manage your time efficiently? So, our huddles that we do in the morning, it's strictly based on that. It's like, here's what I'm up to the next 24 hours. Here's where I'm struggling. This scenario came in. I don't know how to answer it. Cool. We need to create a script on that. Done. Next. What else do we got? So it just starts amplifying itself. So like you guys on LinkedIn, there's a learning curve. You'd have to dive in and be like, okay, wait a second. How does this platform work? And what scripts am I using? And who's sending that? And what if they send it to the wrong person? Oh, I get it. So I can vet the list. There's a part of you that doesn't even fully get what we do yet.
Totally. Oh yeah.
And it does take a little bit of convincing to get over that hurdle to go, okay, I'm going to justify some time to dig into this a little bit, knowing that once I get it, that every hour I put in is going to create less and less work on the back end once the system's set up.
Yeah. That's good.
And that's why I'm creating content, man, is like, this conversation is maybe a trigger point for people to go, okay, I'll maybe look into this now.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say is like, I think that would be a good next step. Like if this resonates, if, LinkedIn is something that really your audience lives there and you feel almost like, there's like untapped potential there, but I still need to understand it. So check Trevor out on his LinkedIn page. Trevor Turnbull, just type it in there. And then reach out. So I think that's a great next step.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure, absolutely. I'm sure you'll be back for another round on this podcast because I don't even think we've scratched the surface of some of the rabbit holes we could have gone down together. But I think we kind of got to wrap it up here for time reasons.
Yeah.
And any book, you said scaling up. So would that be a book you recommend to, or do you have another one in mind? Because I know it's a specialty. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, scaling up is honestly quite a beast. It's a good foundational piece, and there's a lot of good, pieces of it that you can use. But it's definitely for bigger companies. Typically, Traction's a much more consumable, entrepreneurial, startup kind of focused approach.
Gino Wickman. He also did Get a Grip, which is really good. Yep. And then what was the other one? The
Traction, Get a Grip, and Rocket Fuel.
Rocket Fuel. Yeah, that was like more the assessment kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. The other thing it's like a foundational piece of our business and everything that we've talked about is just The One Thing.
Yep.
The One Thing is such a good foundational book.
That one's Gary Keller, right?
Yeah.
That's a rereader. I haven't read that in a while. So
I like that one. I like Essentialism a lot. And both those books, I think, came out within like weeks of each other, and both kind of focus on similar concepts.
Yeah.
Both great books. I think for whatever reason, I think I read Essentialism first, and that one really resonated with me. And then I read The One Thing, and I kind of felt like, oh, this is a copy of Essentialism, but it probably just depended on whatever one you read first.
I feel like The One Thing gets more love on the show for some reason.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way.
I don't know why, because I like them both. But
I think The One Thing gets more shout outs on the show than Essentialism does.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's a pretty easy read, really. Like it's a good one on an audio book too, because I'm terrible at reading. It's me and you, Joe. We're in
Same.
I'm terrible at audiobooks. I literally have 8 available credits right now on Audible.
Oh, I go through audiobooks like crazy, man. Yeah.
So I read way more than I listen to audio. But for me, I mean, I guess it goes the same for you guys, but I don't have a commute. I don't really have a time where I sit down and listen to audiobooks. When I do have free time and I got headphones in my ears, it's usually podcasts or music for me. So, I don't know.
It's cool.
I really should use those credits, though.
Yeah, you probably should. Yeah, it's a lot of good books you're just letting get dusty out there.
Yeah, that's like 8 months of paying for Audible with not actually using Audible.
That's true. That too. All right, man.
Cool, guys.
Yeah, Trevor, it's been awesome. We'll link everything in the show notes on how to contact you, and I think we'll link up your article as well. That was on entrepreneur.com.
Yeah,
is that what it was.
Yeah.
So, could you shoot us an email with that URL? We'll make sure our show notes people get that in the notes as well. And
I should have it too, but either way,
we might have the link already. Cool.
For sure.
Yeah, and I'll send you any other new resources that we create because it's us talking through this has already got me thinking about new content ideas, and because sometimes we don't know this when you're in a bubble of like how much free organized LinkedIn training content do I have out there? And I'm like, well, I got a lot, but it's kind of a little all over the place. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll go organize that.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a second, I'm not going to organize that. I'm going to get my assistant to organize that. And then I'm going to get my VA to go repurpose that. So
there you go.
And it's all mindset. And this has literally shifted for me just in the last couple months. So I think there's so much potential out there for all of your listeners that are listening in on this too, that think that they have nothing to share with the world and they're struggling and they want to stand out from this ever increasing competition. Focus on one thing. Don't overcomplicate things. Step through the fear of like, well, somebody's already talked about that. Well, of course they have.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't.
That's right. Kaleidoscope.
Put your own spin on it.
Yeah. There you go, man.
I appreciate it, guys.
All right, brother.
Well, hopefully we'll see you at TNC in San Diego. Hopefully you make it down. If not, then hopefully we see you soon.
And of course, reach out with any content help. We got your back on that, man.
Absolutely. We're going to have to jam session after this too about some strategies.
I see guitar there. We need to do jam sessions in more ways than one.
Oh, man. I got to pick that thing up again. Yeah. It's been a while.
All right, Trevor. It was great talking to you, man.
You too, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning into that episode. I hope you dug it. I know Joe and I dug it. I actually kicked Joe out of the room. He's not here right now because I wanted to tell you about a tool that I really, really dig. We use it in our business. We recommend it all the time. It's called Easy Webinar, and it's a tool that lets you do live webinars, automated webinars, hybrid webinars, and, pretty much any other kind of webinar if there are other kinds of webinars. But anyway, this tool is kind of like your all-in-one, do-it-all tool for anything webinar related. It's Easy Webinar. It's put out by a dude named Casey Zeman. He's been on the podcast. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's a killer episode. He's a really smart dude, but his software is amazing. It does everything. It's, the title tells you exactly what it does. It's an easy webinar platform. And we use this in our business to run automated webinars all the time. We don't do a lot of live webinars these days. We like to do the kind of automated webinars where somebody can register and then they can either watch it like 15 minutes later or they can watch it the next day, but it's just kind of always running. And it's a system that helps us make autopilot sales off of our webinars. Super cool tool. If you haven't tried it yet, it's an amazing tool. And Casey is actually hooking you up. He said for listeners of Hustle and Flowchart, I can't believe he's doing this, but he said for listeners of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, he's giving 25% off of the membership to use Easy Webinar. It's already super, super inexpensive for what it does and all the cool features it has, but he's hooking you up with 25% off because you're a listener of Hustle and Flowchart. Go to easywebinar.com/hustle. That's where you can get that 25% off discount. That's easywebinar.com/hustle. It's a awesome tool. You're going to dig it. So just go grab it. Check it out. easywebinar.com/hustle. See ya. No, not see ya. You'll hear me in the next show. I don't know how to close these things. Go get Easy Webinar. Talk to you later. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Before taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes. Thanks for listening. Go get it. Wiki.